Welcome to SuperTalk Outdoors, where we celebrate every single Monday at lunchtime the world-class outdoors of the state of Mississippi, because this is the capital of the outdoors in America. I want to thank you for joining us on the powerful SuperTalk Mississippi Radio Network, or on SuperTalk TV at C-Spire TV, or however else you choose to engage with this show on social media or your favorite podcast. It's June 30th, 2024, and it's July 4th week. And I hope everybody's planning just a terrific week of events as we go into next weekend. Here on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, the annual Mississippi Deep Sea Fishing Rodeo is taking place. It starts actually on Thursday, and it runs through Sunday at the Barksdale Pavilion down here. And I have to tell you, I have fished in it for 46 years. It's amazing to think about how much time has flown by, but I really enjoy it. You know, for us, for my family and I, it's a great opportunity for my sons. My son Justin comes down from New York. My son Jordan, who I often talk about on this show, who loves the outdoors. And my brother-in-law's Peter Bohanovich, who lives in Gulfport, and Mark Bohanovich, who lives in the Tampa area. He also has a place here in Biloxi. You know, they join us and we go offshore. And it's a great trip because it's a great time of the year to fish, but we also focus on a wide variety of fish because it is the rodeo and we like to represent well. But, you know, the fishing is kind of secondary to what we're doing. We're just enjoying being together. And I congratulate the Mississippi Deep Sea Fishing Rodeo folks for so many years being able to keep this thing going. It's really a cool event. And, you know, tourists and people who live in Mississippi and from this region really enjoy going, seeing the fish, and you know, just enjoying the other things that are happening there. A lot of great events take place during the fishing rodeo. So if you haven't been before, if you've been before, just go look them up. The Mississippi Deep Sea Fishing Rodeo online. They have a Facebook page as well, and you can see the schedule. I was on their website this morning, and I saw something that really appealed to me. It didn't have the source, but I just want to share it with you. It's right at the end when they were talking about the fishing rodeo, but it's a 2-paragraph description of coastal Mississippi and as it relates to fishing. And I thought it was just great. And here's what it said. Old timers on the Gulf Coast say that a sportsman can fish every day for a year without having to fish twice in the same choice spot. The Mississippi coast offers 65 fishing camps, all situated at favored fishing sites with many excellent fishing spots nearby. Many of the camps offer every kind of facility for sports fishermen, including bait, fishing, tackle, boats, with or without motors, refreshments, detailed information. I should also mention charter boats as to where to fish. Information about fishing camp locations is usually available at Chambers of Commerce online, of course, here in the Mississippi Gulf Coast. But it says the Gulf of Mexico offers a thrilling adventure for the sportsman who wants to tackle the big ones. And the spacious Mississippi Sound is for those who like saltwater fishing at its best. For the freshwater fisherman, the coast offers 3 bays with fresh and saltwater fish, often caught at the same spot with the same tackle, offering a very unique experience. Plus over 1,500 miles of offshore shoreline on bays, lazy bayous, rivers, creeks, and lakes. I think that's a great description, but I often talk about the backwaters of coastal Mississippi, of course, the freshwater lakes here, and then the offshore fishing, some of the best in the world. I really mean it. Some of the best in the world. Okay, so we're going to shift gears. Today, we're going to have a bit of an entertaining conversation. I got a note from a listener. His name is George Marx, a regular listener, and we engaged in discussions. And I learned in our conversations that he had recently finished a book called Starlit Nights and Frosty Morns, which is about to hit the shelves. He's in the final editing process as we speak now. He sent me the manuscript, and the way I would describe the book, it's a love letter to Mississippi's outdoors. It's packed with dog hunting tales of squirrels, coon, quail, ducks, with dogs like Pat the Pointer and Molly the coon hound. from his childhood in places like Shady Grove to his treeing feast today. George's story pulls from decades of journals. He actually kept journals, and we'll talk more about that here shortly. Bringing the woods to life. It's not just about the hunt, but it's about family and faith and the right way to use a hunting dog. And, there's a stereotype around dog hunting that at least some people sense. When they think of dog hunting, they think about maybe a deer hunting dog that might trespass on property and the conflict around that. But there's so much more to the dog hunting heritage in Mississippi. And, one of the things I want to do is celebrate that here on this show. So we're going to have a conversation with George today, and I think it's going to make you want to grab your shotgun and hit the timber before it's over with. So without any further ado, let me welcome my new friend, George Marx, to SuperTalk Outdoors. George, how you doing, my friend?
Doing great this morning, Ricky. Beautiful day. Proud to be with you.
Well, you see the way I talk about your book. I told you I was about halfway done with it, but I'm fascinated by it because the way you've structured it in chapters that are each stories, each sort of representing these journals that you kept. But you kept copious notes for a very long time, didn't you?
I really did. Starting off, I guess, with my quail hunting days, I didn't make notes of, what day of the month it was or day of the week it was. But every time I would go bird hunting, I would come home and I would kept a little tally of how many birds I'd taken. And I did that for about 5 or 6 years. And by the time I was 14 years old, 15 years old, I had become a pretty good wing shot. And a lot of people would say a really good wing shot. But anyway, I killed over 100 wild birds back during those days at a young teenager, and killing over 100 for 5 straight years. And then 3 other years, I killed over 200 wild birds. And I don't know why, but I've just always been kind of a record keeper. This is a little off the subject, but I still have things in a scrapbook. When Bailey Howell was playing basketball in Mississippi State, I kept up a box score of those games. And then a few years later, Leland Mitchell and Joe Dan Gold and Red Stroud. And I don't know, I've always just been a record keeper, So
George, we'll come back to that here in just a second. But okay. One of you make me think of my son Justin, who works for Price Waterhouse in New York City, and for a long period of time, I mean, when he was very young, he used to keep track of our fishing trips. I need to go pull that book out and read it, because I bet there's some special notes in it for sure. But before we get into your book and the hunting stories and all of that, I wanted people to know that you grew up just east of Hazelhurst, Mississippi. And as you mentioned, you were about to talk about Mississippi State. You went to Mississippi State and you got into the banking business. Give us a little kind of thumbnail of all of that.
Okay. Well, I majored in banking and finance at Mississippi State, graduated in May of 1969, and interviewed several potential employers, one of which was Deposit Guarantee National Bank, the old Deposit Guarantee that was in Jackson at the time. At that time, they were the largest bank in the state. And I was offered a job on their training program. And on June 1st of 69, I went to work for Deposit Guarantee. Worked for them until October of 75. Like I say, spent a year on the training program, about 6 months in the credit department, and then I went to the real estate department, where I became a real estate officer. And then at age 25, I became assistant vice president and the second in command in the real estate office. And then in 75, I got an opportunity to come back home to the Bank of Hazelhurst, now called Copiah Bank. And so I started on October the 1st of 75 at the old Bank of Hazelhurst. Wound up working for them until I retired in, let's see, the 1st of April 2017. And when I retired, I was chairman of the board, president, and CEO of the bank. And I'd served in that capacity for 17 years. And I've still remained active in the bank. By that, I mean I'm still on the board of directors, vice chairman of the board, and I serve on the bank's loan committee and audit committee. So it's been a wonderful career. Met a whole lot of great people, had some great mentors. It was a really fun ride, you know.
The other thing I'll note, and we'll come back on the other side because we've come into the end of this segment, but you were also, which is typical of small bank or small town banks, is you were very active in the community, giving back to the community in a bunch of different ways. But you found peace and love in the world by enjoying the outdoors. And when we come back on the other side, we're going to talk more about that. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. Are you looking to purchase that perfect piece of hunting property, upgrade your farm equipment, or have you been dreaming of owning your slice of heaven out in the country? Look no further than Mississippi Land Bank for your financing needs. For more than 100 years, farming families and landowners in North Mississippi have turned to Mississippi Land Bank for all kinds of financial solutions, whether it's for land, equipment, or livestock. For more information, visit mslandbank.com or go by and see one of their friendly staff at any of their offices. We're thrilled to have Mississippi Land Bank as a sponsor of Super Talk Outdoors. Now, let's get back to our special guest today, George Marx, who is the author of a new book that will soon be published called Starlit Nights and Frosty Morns. And it's really a celebration of the heritage of dog hunting in Mississippi. And we're going to get into all that here shortly. What I was mentioning before we went to break, you've always given back, but it's clear that the thing that created peace in your life was your connection with the outdoors. And that, what would your life have been like, George, without the outdoors?
Ricky, I shudder to think what it would have been like. I feel sorry for anybody that has grown up without being able to enjoy the outdoors. It's just, it's God's creation. It's magnificent. I guess you would say I was born into it. My dad had been a huge quail hunter and fox hunter, and my very earliest memories going with him at night, and he would leave me in the pickup sometimes on his fox hunts, So it's special, and it's God given,
Yeah,
it really
so
is.
Look, so what is it that you kept all these journals at the time that you were doing the journals? I don't know that you had it in your mind that you would eventually one day write a book, that you started to write in 2023. But what is it that ultimately drove you to capture all this? Because I said I've read about halfway through the book. I just love the way you tell the stories. It's kind of, sitting around the campfire and chatting with your friends about these wonderful experiences out in the outdoors. What drove you to write the book?
I think more than anything, probably just a love and admiration for the outdoors. I guess a little more specifically, a love of dogs, hunting dogs. Just always been very special to me. And I figured someday maybe that I might have a need for some of these records. I will say that when I was in school, my favorite subjects, unlike a lot of guys, were not chemistry and biology and math. It was English and composition and writing and things of that nature. So I'm so glad now that I did keep those records, because it's kind of an heirloom that I can hand down to my kids and grandkids, and it's really special.
So as you sort of planned this book and began to write it, like, again, the name of the book is Starlit Nights and Frosty Morns, and we'll get a publishing schedule on it before we get done with the conversation. But when you sat down to do it, Were you aware at the time, had any other books like it been written?
Well, of course, I've read a lot of hunting books, but most of the ones I have read were not really, a collection of memories of actual events, or at least I didn't get the feel that they were. And I just thought it was very important to make sure that what I was putting on a piece of paper was true and correct to the best of my knowledge and recollection. And I've
Yeah.
talked to numerous of my hunting buddies. Um, some of the things maybe I might not have been quite as clear on, and I would ask them for their impressions of it and things of that nature. And so it's really good. I've had a lot. I never dreamed I would need as much help in writing it as and I state that in my book. But um, you can kind of tell about that when you look at the acknowledgments that I made in the book. But
Well, hey, let me
had a
tell you
lot of
what it.
help.
As a former publisher of newspapers and digital media companies, someone said to me early in my career. In fact, it was Roland Weeks, the former publisher of the Sun Herald, said to me that there's something about humans that make us not want to have someone edit our stuff. But the great writers understands that what makes them a great writer is having great editors. And he said at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you had one editor or 100 editors. At the end of the day, your name is on it. So why not strive for it to be the best it can possibly be? That's one of the beauties of me going through my book that I'm completing now, is that throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to meet some of the best editors in the country, Pulitzer Prize winning editors. And one of them, who used to head the Washington Bureau for Nate Ritter and AP, is editing my book. And it's such a gift to have, really terrific editors around you. And you're lucky that you've got a team around you. That's what's going to result is a book that conveys the message as plainly and as clearly as you possibly can, so that your legacy is that you've given back these stories of dog hunting in Mississippi that live on way longer than you. And that's a beautiful thing to leave behind, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely, it is. Another thing that I thought was important, through the years, other than for the very first hunting dog I ever owned, I have photos, lots of them. And as you can tell, having gone through the transcript manuscript, I've got over 100 photos in this book, starting in the early 60s all the way through February of 2025. And I just think
Yeah,
that adds a lot of accuracy and truth to what I'm trying to convey. And it also is kind of a tribute to the people that are in those
it is.
photos and the dogs,
Yeah, I agree. I agree. The photos are terrific because as you read about these dogs and these stories and these people you encounter along the way, you can see the photos of those dogs and those people that you encounter along the way. I think it's beautiful. It's a great thing. When you think about dog hunting and what it means to you, and this clarion call to write this book, how do obviously I've read the beginning of the book, so I have a sense of this, but tell our listeners what dog hunting means to you, what dog hunting means to the heritage of Mississippi outdoors.
Well, I think it goes back a long, long way, much further than when I came into the world. People, especially people that lived in the country, have had dogs, I guess, since the inception of our country. And back in the olden times, a lot of those people depending on dogs to put food on the table, really. And not so much now as it was perhaps back then. But, dog, dogs are special. And I've had a lot of special ones. I've had some mediocre ones. I've had some poor ones, but but what you remember more than anything are the good ones and the good times that they caused you to have. And just a great experience. I would encourage any youngster to have their dad try to find them the best way to start is with a tree and feist, a squirrel dog, because the youngsters don't have to worry about, like they would in a deer stand, for example, being quiet or being motionless. When you're hunting a squirrel with a dog, a feist dog, you can have two or three buddies with you. You can talk and laugh and play, and it's just a great way to start a youngster, introduce them to the great outdoors.
What? As I was reading, it reminded me when I was growing up. My dad loved to hunt and fish, but I spent the majority of my time fishing with my two grandfathers, and one lived for a good long time actually in Pensacola, but then they moved to Sylacauga, Chillersburg area of Alabama, and then my other grandfather was in the Center Point area, just north of Birmingham. But his name was Pawpaw. He used to send me Outdoor Life. He'd save his Outdoor Life, and for his entire life, until he passed away, every month I'd get his Outdoor Life, and I'd read the stories in Outdoor Life. That's one of the things that helped me dream as a young kid, was reading those stories. And that's what I thought about when I was reading your book. When we get back on the other side, we'll explain to you some of the stories. There's some great stories in here. One that dates back to 1955 with Pat, and we'll talk about what that's all about. But there's just so many fascinating stories. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with George and celebrate dog hunting in Mississippi. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. We appreciate you joining us today. It's a special day. Every now and then we get this opportunity, and I say this on a regular basis. I appreciate the feedback I get from readers and the conversation. From listeners. The opportunity we have to connect, the ideas I get about guests, and our guest today is one of those people. George Marx reached out to me. He's a listener of the show. He recently finished a book called Starlit Nights and Frosty Morns, which is a tribute to dog hunting in Mississippi. And he sent me the manuscript. I started to read it. I thought, man, I got to get George on the show because he's a great storyteller, and his book I think is going to be super popular by the time this is all over with. But listen, I made a note to myself on chapter 3. You talk about Pat, but I mean, there's really I could have just flipped the pages and grabbed any lesson and talk and asked you to share it with us. But why don't you tell the story about Pat?
Well, Pat was the first first quail dog that came into my life. My dad, I came home from school one afternoon, got off the school bus, walked up the driveway, he went inside, and about an hour later, my dad got home. He came in and he said, son, go out and look in my pickup truck. Something I want you to see. So I went out, and there was a liver and white pointer female whose name was Pat. And he had bought her from a guy by the name of J.P. Mullen, who was a bird dog trainer that lived about 15 miles west of Hazelhurst. And so, the next a day or two later, maybe the next day, we carried her hunting, and bird season was not open. So obviously my dad did not carry a gun. I was too young to hunt then. I was tagging along, but we left my house on foot, walking to the south, and I witnessed her go from an all-out gallop to a slowing down to a creep and then a point. And I didn't know what a point was at that point in time, but my dad says she's pointing a covey of birds. Sure enough, we walked up and kicked the birds up, 12, 15 birds in the covey. And so then we went on a little further, and she pointed another covey of birds. So that just really, I can remember it just like it happened yesterday, literally. And I was would probably have been around, I was probably 10, 11 years old at that time, and maybe 12. But anyway, it started my love for bird hunting. And I would still have that love today. If, of course, I'm 77 years old now, and I can't walk like I used to could. But and we don't have it near the birds that we had back in those days. But yeah, I own really good bird dogs.
Hey, listen, you made me think as I was raised in a community of Gulfport called Bowles View, and across the street from my house, all I remember is this name is General Eubanks lived across the street, and he had quail dogs. And at the time, I didn't really appreciate it. In fact, he invited me to go with him once, and I got to see him point, and I was so fascinated by it all. I mean, of course, this has been a long time ago, and I wish I had the opportunity to speak to him today, but he really did create a thrill for me really early in my life, watching those dogs point. But man, that is a special thing to observe, isn't it?
It really is, Ricky. I tell people all the time that if you have a really good bird dog and you have a lot of birds, there's no finer sport. It's just something about that sound that a covey makes when they become airborne, scattered in 15 different directions, and you're trying to decide which one you're going to pick out to shoot. It's fascinating to me anyway. And I know
I had Lake Pickle on my show last week. Lake was with the Primos team, and he has the Speak the Language podcast now. And, he's just a dynamic young man, but he also has recently started working for Meat Eater, which is one of the leading hunting podcasts in the United States. It's tremendous what that's all about. But he's actually doing focuses. And one of the focuses he's doing, in fact, the one that just got posted is around quail hunting and what's changed about quail hunting over the many years and whatever. Will Primos joins him on that podcast, but that's one that I think people, if they want to understand why the bird hunting is not what it used to be, that would be one to go listen to for sure. Hey, you also in chapter 4, I'm struck by the competitive spirit that kind of is a common thread through so many of these stories. But you talk about your competition with Johnny Ainsworth and how that competitive spirit of youth, that was part of your deal, wasn't it?
Well, it really was. We were just youngsters, and what you're talking about is we hatched a plan to see who could take the most squirrels still hunting, and that happened one afternoon after a bunch of the boys that lived in the community out there had played baseball in my front yard. But anyway, we decided to have a 3-year contest to see who could take the most squirrels still hunting. And the way you proved how many you'd taken was you kept the squirrel tails. And I was hunting with a 410 and he had a 20 gauge, both of them single barrels. And that first year, I remember the very first year, I killed 7 squirrels one afternoon, and I called Johnny up to brag. And guess what? He had killed 8 that first day. So anyway, it went on, and we decided the competition that it would end, around the 10th of December or the 1st of December, because the leaves would be beginning to come off the trees by that time. And the first year he won, he took, we both killed over 75, but he took about 6 more than I did. The second year I won, and then the third year he won again. But I tell everybody that the reason he won 2 out of 3 years was because he'd had a little bit more hunting experience than I had, and he was a year older. So, we were both pretty good at it, though.
What I was also sort of touched. Again, I'm learning about a lot of this because I think I've maybe been. I think I went hunting once with coon dogs. Squirrel dogs once. But as you and then rabbit, I went rabbit hunting with dogs once, and that was an interesting process in and of itself. But I was touched by the coon dog hunting. In what I would call high stakes setting. Talk about that.
Okay. Well, one thing I did not mention in my book that I probably should have. I coon hunted in high school, junior high and high school, and had a really good dog by the name of Rock. And then in later years, I had a yearning to get back into it, and that's when I got into the tree and walker dog business with Molly. Another thing I did not mention in the book was that I, along with two other buddies of mine, were the original incorporators of the Mississippi Raccoon Hunters Association in 1976, and it's still in existence today. And I served as president of that organization, statewide organization, for 2 years, and then I was the secretary treasurer for another 2 years or so. But coon hunting, in the records that I kept from February of 76 through May of 83, I coon hunted 415 nights.
Wow.
And, I even have the number of times my dogs treed. They treed 1,321 times. We saw 785 raccoons. We took 286. So that says a little something about conservation and love for the outdoors and love for the sport. We could have taken all 785 of those had we wanted to. We only took 36% of them. We left them to tree another night, et cetera, et cetera. But it's all about being a good steward of what the good Lord gives you, And we got to think about our children, our grandchildren, our grandchildren's children, hoping that we can preserve this for them,
Listen, I've leased 3 separate farms, and friends own property adjacent to one of them. And so, we have access to well over 2,000 acres. And man, I have never seen so many coons in my life. We have a coon infestation. That's probably the story across Mississippi. Okay, look, when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with George, and I want him to tell us what story most stands out to him. If he looks back in his book, what story most stands out to him? We'll see you more after this break. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. We're having a good time today just talking about hunting stories, especially dog hunting, kind of celebrating the dog hunting culture and heritage in Mississippi. I'm visiting with my new friend, George Marx, who is the author of Starlit Nights and Frosty Morns. It's about to hit the shelves. About when do you think the book's going to be out, George?
Ricky, I think the plan now is to send the final edited PDFs to the publisher next week. And I understand from them that we're probably looking at maybe 3 weeks to get a proof of the book and the dust page, et cetera. And then they say it'll be 4 to 5 weeks for I'm going to have 500 books printed initially. And then, see how it goes and then go from there. But
you can let me know.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you can let me know when it's coming out, and I'll let our listeners know.
Oh, okay. So hopefully it should be sometime in July.
Yeah. Okay. So listen, when you look back on this wonderful writing of his dog hunting heritage and history and the role that it played in your life, what story stands out the most to you?
Well, I have a lot of good ones, but I would have to say that it's chapter 16 in my book, which is Molly and the Little World Hunt of 1978. That hunt was held in Greenville, Mississippi. She was 6 years old at the time. She was a really outstanding dog. So I went to Greenville. It was held in Greenville. And I hunted on Friday night and Saturday night. Friday night, they sent us to Yazoo City. And I hunted with 3 other guys. There was a guide and a judge, 3 other guys, and me. So we had 4 dogs. We hunted just west of Mississippi Chemical Plant, just north of Yazoo City, in the swamp there, in the river swamp. And what stands out about that night is that Molly won the cast. I was feeling real good about placing in the top 20, and we got ready to come out. I'd been watching my compass all night, but the guide and the judge had assured us they knew those woods like the back of their hands. Well, they didn't. We came to a log road that was not familiar, and they turned to the left. And I said, "Where are you going, Judge?" He said, "To the truck." And I said, "I don't think so," because I'd been paying close attention. I got lost early on in my coon hunting career and spent the whole night in the woods, and I learned how to read a compass really well. I said, "That truck is the opposite way." And there was a boy from South Carolina with us in the hunt that had a Grand Night champion Walker dog. And even though I'd beaten his dog that night with Molly, he said, "I believe I'm going to go with old Mississippi here. I think I've been watching him look at that compass." So we walked out. About an hour later, we came to the truck. 3 hours later, the guys were still, the rest of them were still not at the truck. And we heard them hollering in there about a mile lost. So I said, I've got a good mind not even to blow the horn. But I did, because I was worried about getting back to the clubhouse on time where the score would count. We had a deadline of, early in that next morning. And long story short, they got out. The judge had lost the scorecard. And without a scorecard, regardless of what all the rest of the people in the cast tell the master of hounds, he will not score those points. So my dog had been done an injustice. Well, the next night I was sent to Warren, Arkansas. I was hunting against 3 Grand Night champion Walker males. I had a real good African-American friend from Macomb that drove up that night to go hunt on that cast with me that had trained some young dogs out of Molly. We turned the dogs loose. Immediately, the other 3 dogs struck. They struck them in for 100 points, 75 points, 50 points. They ran for about 5 minutes and treed. My dog had never opened. She would absolutely not open on anything but a coon. So anyway, they left to go to that tree when those 3 dogs treed. I told Bruce, I said, "Go with them. Something's not right." Bruce Bullock was his name, my African-American friend. So when they left, there was Bruce, a judge, a guide, and 3 other hunters. So there were 3, 4, 5, there were 6 lights headed away from me. A few minutes later, the dogs quit treeing. About 10 minutes later, I see lights coming back to me, and there are only three lights instead of 6. They got within sight, and he was grinning ear to ear. They had treed a bobcat and had been scratched. So go ahead.
No, I hate to break your story midstream, but we're running out of time, George.
Okay.
It's been a pleasure. You reminded me of hunting with Clay Wagner once and following the cat eyes to a deer stand. That got me there, but when the sun came up, I didn't know how to get out. I think we all have stories like that. It's been a pleasure to spend some time with you, my friend.
It's been great here. Clay Wagner, the banker?
Yes.
I know Clay well.
I bet you do. Hey, listen, have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you so much.